Welcome to the God Talk series. This video is called Go and Sin No More. Unfortunately, this is going to be a long video. Let's get to it. So before I start the spiritual videos, it's important to know what is sin. This is a video people may not like. The truth is objective. How people respond to it, it's up to them. If you read the Old Testament, God kept trying to warn his people to stay on the right track of his goodness, which is through his mercy. But over and over again, we failed. Why? What is it in us that makes us sin? Why don't we know right from wrong? Some can look at themselves and say, well, I don't sin that much, right? You got to really examine yourself. You're not perfect, and you do have sin. Sorry. So, you may be a really good person, and you do your best, but there's always shortcomings. So that's the reality. What is in us that makes us sin? Why don't we know right from wrong? A child even knows when they're being good or bad. So, however, there's a thing called culpability. In other words, sometimes we just don't know, and that's in the future. So I won't get into that. It is said that the just man sins 7 times a day, and by far, the majority of us aren't even just. So how can we sin no more? What is sin? So sin is breaking a commandment, basically, and we'll get into that. The Jews had responses to those who break a command. For example, they wanted to stone the woman who got caught in adultery, a sin against the 6th commandment. Why didn't they stone the man? I'm not going to go that way. They both should be stoned, whatever. But the point is that they both sinned against the 6th command. The 10 Commandments. I am the Lord your God. You shall worship the Lord your God and serve him only. The Jews began worshiping idols, and this is where it came from, the false gods. So, God brought the Jews out of Egypt. Remember that? And then we talked about this in the previous video. And Pharaoh, God had to prove himself to Pharaoh. Pharaoh lost, obviously. And then, and the Jews kind of were getting impatient and waiting for Moses to bring down, waiting for Moses, and they made a gold calf, and they started worshiping the calf. Why? It's part of our nature, right? By the way, when I say Jewish people, they were the first, but everybody's included, okay? So, God is a Judeo-Christian God. It's the truth. You guys, there's wars over this. So I'm just putting the truth, and I get martyred, I get martyred. He already proved it. He proved it to Pharaoh. Pharaoh he worshipped false gods, and like a lot of countries did, and civilizations. So, that gets into spiritualism. Everything like that is a false god. So 2, you shall not take the Lord of your God in vain. 3, remember to keep the holy day, the Sabbath day. 4, honor your father and your mother. So this is basically honoring God. We're still trying to honor God. Give God what is his due. That includes the church, going to church on Sundays. We talked about that. And holy days. Parents aren't perfect, but God gave you to them for a reason. Now, this can be tricky. Even if they're really bad, try to remember what was good about them and what the good things they did. We're in a society where divorce is rampant. The home is broken up. These are tough times. They were not like this before. So this is kind of tricky given all divorces, etc. with the parents. So, and God understands this. So just do the best you can to remember, Anyway, you shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. You shall not covet your neighbor's goods. These commandments are to protect your neighbor and his goods. So in other words, the first set of commandments are to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. That's the bottom line. The rest is to love your neighbor as yourself, really in a nutshell. So, Jesus summed up that. However, Jesus goes further. Let's take a look. Whosoever this is Matthew 25:21 and on. Whosoever is angry with his brother shall be in danger of judgment. Never mind revenge, but if you're angry with them. There is a thing called just anger, right? But, it's how you respond to it. Are you going to go out and kill them? Is it an eye for an eye? That's not Jesus' way. And then now you're starting to see it's sometimes difficult to be a Christian. Sometimes you want to return bad for bad. But there's reason behind this. Anyway, and that gets into spiritual aspects. So that's why I did this before the spiritual stuff. Whosoever shall look at a woman in lust after her, or a guy in lust, has already committed adultery within his heart or her heart. Okay? So lust, that's all over the place today. And, if you just go on the internet or on the TV, there's women don't dress as modest as they used to. And guys don't dress. So, and lust can go all these weird directions, So, lust is something you have to recognize and try to stop it immediately. All right? And this is again from Jesus, not me. Whosoever shall put away his wife, except in the case of fornication, maketh her commit adultery, and he that shall marry her is put away, that is put away, commit adultery. In other words, we live in a lot of society where people are shacking up. That means living together. People are, divorcing and remarrying. It's crazy. And unfortunately, some people just accept that as norm. No, that's not normal. It's crazy. We live in a crazy society. So, Jesus is clear with his commandments. You in the case of fornication, you don't divorce. There's some question as to whether there's a legitimate marriage or not, and that's up to the church to decide. And why is it the church decides? Because they have the wisdom. When you're in it, sometimes it's hard for you to be objective. I'm sorry, but it's, you're full of emotions and like, oh, I love him or I love her. It doesn't matter. If you got married once, you're committing adultery with the next person, and that's a sin. So I know it's getting hard, huh? But I say do not swear at all, neither by heaven or for his throne, nor by earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is a city God. This is, be careful not to take oaths, like if you get married, that's, or you become a priest or whatever, that's an oath to God. That's an extreme situation, and that is part of the process. But generally speaking, other than that, you shouldn't be taking oaths, unless, again, we're quiet. Okay, so be careful. Love your enemies. Oh, that's a tough one. Do good to them that hate you. Well, most of us, unless you're a huge, big dude or big girl or whatever, are subject to lots of things that, people do to us, And Jesus says to love those who harm you. Love your enemies. Do good to them that hate you, that you may be the children of your Father who is in heaven. This is difficult. Forgiving is extremely difficult, especially if it's repetitive problems that people give to you. We have to bear with one another. That's what Christ says. You try to bear with one another. Everybody's got their problems, whatever. But so this is a very, very hard, maybe the hardest of all the situations is forgiveness. And there's some psychology behind that, but I'm not going to go into it right now. So let's go further. Letters from St. Paul, etc., guide the faithful to morality of the church. So if you look at his letters, you can see how, St. Peter and Paul try to guide the church in these matters. So the 7 sins and the virtues are in parentheses. Pride. Satan fell due to pride. This is, people are really into themselves. There was a perfume called, way back in the day, Me. I love me. Me. Well, that's quite prideful. It's not putting others first. It's focusing on yourself. So, you got to focus on yourself in the sense to help yourself out and do good for yourself. But you're not all that is great. Sometimes a beautiful person really gets stuck in this, and it's like, no, God gave you the beauty, but you're really just a bunch of dirt. And, you just, you have dignity too, but you're not you're not all that. And quite frankly, it lasts about 20 years, maybe, if you're lucky, and then you become wrinkly and it's going to go away. So pride, Satan fell due to pride. So the opposite is humbleness, humility. So those who put others first, those who lower themselves for the sake of others, that's humbleness, to lower themselves. Anyway, lust. Lust is basically wanting something that's for you, that your body wants. Your body, you got to have to kind of control your body. And it's tough, especially if you have addiction type stuff. So lust is an intense desire, mostly associated with sexual pleasure, but also money, power, and fame. Again, this is hard for people given a society we live in. We live in a crazy society where modesty doesn't exist. It was much easier to do this when modesty occurred. What is modesty? Modesty is dressing appropriately and not showing your skin. You can go to the beach and it's, I don't know how anybody can go to the beach and kind of not lust. So you're putting yourself into what they call occasional sin. Now, anyway, I'll just leave it at that. This could be money, power, and fame, especially in, Hollywood or politicians. They get problems with this. Here's another one. This is really pertinent today. Did God bless Sodom and Gomorrah, or did he destroy them? He destroyed them. Next, gluttony. Overconsumption of food, drink, etc. So gluttony is kind of like your, how do you say this? Put it this way, it's better, maybe temperance and moderation is the approach to gluttony. Gluttony is going too far. You're going to kind of control your appetite, and it can be food or drink mostly, but it can be appetite for other things. So temperance, moderation, take modest amounts. This includes drinking alcohol. Okay, modest drink might be a drink an hour, right? But no, our society tells us to drink and pass out. Okay. 4, greed, the love of money and possessions. Again, this is usually having to do with the rich. It can be with the poor, just trying to hold on to what they have or whatever. But it's mostly a rich thing, and they love money. They want to have money. They want to live in money. And Christ even said it's harder for a rich man to get through an eye of a needle than get into heaven. Now, eye of a needle means something different. It doesn't mean like a sewing needle. But it's hard. So those who have money would understand this. The opposite is generosity and charity. So helping others get, so a lot of your rich people, to do so, they set aside lots of money to be given to charities. And by the way, this is for anybody to try to be charitable and generous, to help others along the way that are less unfortunate, By the way, the gift of money is a gift. People don't realize that. People have different gifts from God. They, some have beauty, some have money, some have faith. There's a lot of different gifts. Some have sports, finesse, agility, whatever it is. Some have intelligence. All these things are God-given. All right, next, sloth, physical laziness, disinterested in physical matters. The opposite is diligence and working hard. So we just want to keep um, you want to keep working hard and just keep working. Now, if you don't, the tricky thing is nowadays a lot of people live off the government, and it's I understand this. I'm not getting the politics of it, but there are some cases where you know if it's a transitory situation, that's fine. You know, you have medical condition or you're in a bad slump or the economy is poor, then there's nothing wrong with that. However, perpetually living off the government, there's definitely something wrong with that. Unless you have a physical problem. So disinterested in physical. Sloth also is particularly important with you. I don't feel like going to church today. That's sloth. You want to exercise spiritual aspects, which we'll talk about another time. So diligence and working hard. By the way, this stuff makes you feel good. In other words, when you humble yourself, it makes you feel good. When you're chaste, it makes you feel good inside. Temperance, control of what you eat or whatever, that makes you feel good. Working hard makes you feel good. Now, some people work too much. That's another story. It's almost like an addiction. Anyway, anger, hate or rage, desire for revenge. We live in a society that this is kind of like considered cool. I have to admit, sometimes anger can be funny if it's how do you say it, comedic. But real anger I'm talking about is not, the desire for revenge. That's not good. You just gotta, you gotta control it. You gotta, and meekness is the solution. Meekness or docility. Try to be, and Jesus said, "Learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart." I mean, with a thought, Jesus could have killed everybody. He could, he had that power. So he let people take him. I mean, remember he would kind of miraculously go through the crowds when it wasn't time for him to, his time to die, if you will. But I mean, when they whipped him, he just took it. He could have took the whip out of his guy's hand without looking, without thinking, just thinking about it. I mean, he's God, but he didn't. He wanted to show us how to live. So I'm not saying we get whipped. You're missing the point. The point is he showed that because his incredible power, he didn't use it. So anyway, meekness and docility, to be calm, to be, gentle, not full of anger, and you get the point. Envy is tricky because tends to be a sin of the poor, and wanting others' possessions, happiness, and talents. But envy can be a form of, like, if you have a disability and you wish you didn't have it, or if you had if you're poor or live on the edge, you wish you had a house, or you wish you had somebody's looks, or you wish you had somebody's brains, or you wish you had someone's athletic ability, etc. That's envy. Combat that is gratitude. You have your own gifts. God gave you your own gifts. Even if you are, you don't think you do. You do. They may not be pronounced, but they are gifts. You may have a gift of health. You might be poor, but you might be never sick. Sometimes, and the rich suffer too. Often the rich, people want money from them all the time, or sometimes tragedy happens in rich families. So everybody suffers. But, so be grateful for what you have, and we'll take it from there. Emotional response can lead to sin. Fear, worry, lust. So we got to try to be even keeled, calm, and composed. That's, you don't, anger feeds anger. And if someone's angry, walk away. Or you know, if anyway, you get the point. So how do we resolve this? How do we solve this problem of this sin? Well, think of Jesus as the head doctor to heal sin. He started the practice, and he told us what to do. So when we sin, so think of the church as the hospital, where he has priests in his stead, in his position to forgive sins. And this has been going on again. Irenaeus, I think it's Irenaeus, but anyway, in 180 AD wrote about private confession. Now, that was a long time ago. That was, it's been going on. The point is, way before the Bible, way before the schisms, it's always been, okay? So recall, by the way, those who want to look at the early fathers' writings, they have access to them online. So what I'm saying is just information I'm passing on to you. It already exists out there. So recall Jesus' word to his disciples, whose sins you forgive are forgiven. Well, why would he say that? Only God can forgive sins. That was what the Jews were saying. No. Jesus sent the Holy Ghost to remain with us while he was in heaven. And recall the apostles on Pentecost. That's the beginning of the church. We talked about that in the other videos. Then the laying of hands and the apostolic succession. This is the Holy Spirit by way of the method which Jesus, told us. This is what he did. And this is his church. This is his instruments. This is his process. And in the breaking the bread. Again, this is one of the previous videos. This is what Jesus called his church, and this is his method. So look at the church as a hospital. This is trying to keep us away from sin, which in the beginning we have a tendency to just hurt each other and, mayhem. He didn't design it that way. That's the devil. So, state of grace. Once one recognizes, again, just man sins 7 times a day, so everybody's in on this. You don't think you're not better than others. Nobody's better than anybody. It's the way it is. We all sin. Once one recognizes they have sinned, which everybody does, one goes to confession. It depends on where they are in terms of church and baptism, etc. But that's just, I'm talking about the system. So we have confession for that. So Jesus left up this sacrament to help us fight sin caused by ourselves, others, and evil spirits. So we can be tempted by ourselves, our concupiscences, as you will. Others can cause us to sin. They can tempt us, or the evil spirits, either getting in our mind and on our, or whatever, can tempt us. So when you go to confession, you are then cleansed from sin. This is why he wanted to have confession in the first place. And Jesus says, "Go and sin no more." Okay, and we try to avoid the near occasions of sin. So if you're shacking up, that's a near occasion of sin. If you're going to a bar and you have trouble with alcohol, that's a near occasion of sin. If you hang out with drug people and you're trying to avoid drugs, there you go. You got to be careful of that stuff. You might have to find a new set of friends, or just meet with your friends when they are sober, or when they're, this is you. You are in charge of your own soul. You're the driver. And then Jesus left us these things. So in the beginning, it might be difficult. One might have to keep going back to confession, but you don't give up. Keep going. In a sense, we're all addicts. We're addicted to a particular sin or set of sins. We are addicts. So we have that tendency. So as you keep going to confession, you gain strength and fortitude, they call it. And you can fight it off, or help, Jesus will help you fight it off. Okay, or the Holy Spirit will. Second, what Jesus set up is a constant heavenly food by a Holy Communion. So, and this, again, for those who remain in a state of grace. can receive this to fortify us against sin. So a lot of people, they just go to communion. They shouldn't. It's a double sin. And especially certain politicians. And I'm not judging. Jesus will judge. So, you are to, when you're in a state of grace. No, state of grace means that you've gone to confession and you're not sinning anymore. You might have venial sins, that's minor sins, but you may not commit a major sin. You can still receive Holy Communion. That's a state of grace, and you want to remain in that till you die. That's the ability to fight off sin, and we need that system, which Jesus gave us because he knows us better than ourselves. This is what he did. This is a system he set up, knowing our nature. Okay, hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll hopefully do the spiritual stuff next.